Thank you very much. Are we good? Is it working? All right, cool. Good morning. Welcome to PyCon, Italy. I'm really happy to be here. It's my first time in this conference. It's a really beautiful city, and I'm really happy to see everybody here. So thank you so much for the organizers for putting this together. I'm really, really grateful. They've been taking really good care of me with all my crazy questions and I don't know what. So today I want to ask you a question. Can we make the light bulb want to change? And before we start, I just want to say that I'm going to be touching on some personal topics, some subjective things, maybe some things that are a little bit sensitive. And in general, it's just a general life tip that you want to enhance your calm and communicate with kindness and act with empathy. And these are things that are going to help you, not just to you, but to other people. I also want to say that I'm going to be like 45 minutes is the talk. Maybe I'll keep it a little bit shorter because I don't want to dig into your coffee break too much, or my coffee break. I don't know, I'm sufficiently caffeinated. I love this country. The coffee here is great. But I'm not going to take on-stage questions. So I'm afraid that if you had a comment disguised as a question, you'll have to talk to me afterwards. I encourage you to talk to me afterwards. I think you'll be able to recognize me with the hair. So if you wanna come and ask me anything or consult or share something, I'm also on the conference Slack. I'm on Twitter. You can email me. I'm just kind of everywhere on the internet. So, who am I? My name is Mikey Ariel. I'm a technical writer for OpenStack. I work at Red Hat. I was born in Israel. I grew up in California, and now I live in Prague, Czech Republic. Okay, so I'm kind of everywhere. I used to work on OpenShift containers and JBoss as well. That's kind of in my past. I'm a recovering Scrum Master. I still love Agile in whatever form it may take. I'm on the core team of Write the Docs, which is a documentation community that was built on open source communities, Python and Django. It is related to Read the Docs. It was started by the same person, Eric Holscher. It's a good friend of mine. I run the Prague conference, and our CFP is open if anybody wants to join our fun. And I'm also a former Django Girls workshop organizer. I'm a great supporter of Django Girls. I am a member of the DSF, Django Software Foundation, documentation advisor, and I'm the co-author of the Happiness Package Project with Sasha Romain, a good friend of mine. Look it up. It's a really cheerful kind of project meant to spread the good vibes among the tech community. So the title of the talk originated from a joke. And if you don't know this joke, then I will tell you now, because I can't assume that you know this joke. So how many therapists does it take to change a light bulb? One. But the light bulb has to want to change. All right? So if you never heard this joke before, there it is. And if you know it, then you probably had some time to reflect on what this actually means. Because, yeah, you know, jokes aside, it's kind of a philosophical question, right? I mean, what will make this light bulb want to change? Can we even do it? You know, I mean, can we influence somehow the light bulb's desire to stay right where it is, doing whatever it is that light bulbs do? I mean, the answer to that probably depends on whether you're the therapist or the light bulb. And let's face it, change can be quite scary for some of us. And for most of us, it's not something that we take lightly. And rightly so. So let's break it down a bit. Change, the definition, dictionary definition, or the Google definition of change is an act or process through which something becomes different. Or, as a verb, is to make or become different. And the key word here is different. Different meaning not the same as it was before, meaning something new. Now, for some people, different can be exciting. You know, something new, and for some people, different can sound a little bit terrifying. Most of the time, it could be either or both, neither. It really depends on who you are, where you are, how does it hit you, where does it find you in your life. So for example, from the therapist's point of view, we would not be proposing the light bulb to change if we didn't think that it was going to improve the light bulb's life in some way or another. From the light bulb's perspective, you know, we might see the point in this need for a change, but maybe we can think of one or more ways that it can go wrong. And we were perfectly happy just kind of hanging out there doing whatever it is that light bulbs do. So why would we want to change? Okay? Just remember that whatever you're feeling, whatever you're going through, whether it is, you know, you're trying to influence a change, managing a change for yourself, or having to deal with a change that somebody else proposed, you are not alone. Okay? If you look around you, there are plenty of people around you, and every single person has to deal with change. This is kind of a given in today's world. You know, it's fast-paced, things are not stagnant, like everything happens. You know, if you're looking at the dot-com bubble, you know, in the 90s, like it took I don't know, it took almost 10 years for it to burst. And then if you look at Bitcoin, you know, so, I mean, things are moving in a much faster pace nowadays. So let's make the assumption that whatever it is you're dealing with, some people around you have already done this or are dealing with, so you don't have to worry about being an island, because you're not. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so I'm going to take this somewhere else now. Does anybody recognize these characters? Mm-hmm. Raise your hand if you know what this is. All right, cool. So, but I cannot assume that everybody knows what it is. So I'm going to say these are the characters from the stories of Winnie the Pooh. Okay? And this children's story, I mean, I grew up on it. I know quite a few people who grew up on it. And it influenced a lot at how I view people. And if you're thinking, you know, oh, you know, it's funny or silly, it's just a kid's story, remember, adults wrote this, you know? Somebody, a grown-up wrote this. And a lot of children's stories have a lot of philosophical, psychological, you know, more of a humanity-related messages, you know, that are trying to educate the next generations on certain principles, okay? So Winnie the Pooh's characters actually have been used as allegories or archetypes in psychological research. And I am not a psychologist, but I play one on TV. And you read this and you hear about it. So they can help you look at different personality types to be able to extrapolate things about yourself and how you can, let's say, face certain challenges about you. So I want to focus in this context of change management and how to handle change, how to influence change, how to accept change. I want to focus on two characters from these stories. Okay? And I love these characters. So if we look at Tigger and Eeyore as archetypes, okay? So these are extreme examples of certain personalities, okay? And we can sort of drill down and see what we might be dealing with. So on one end of the spectrum, you have the Tiggers. And bouncing is what Tiggers do best, okay? So they're, you know, they are adaptable, they're excited, you know, they're flexible about things, they're intuitive, they're always ready to get up and go, you know, and they're not afraid to fail fast, fail often, and oftentimes they go with their gut instinct, okay? On the other hand, you know, they can be a little bit unstable, a little bit inconsistent, you know, they might be too bouncy, you know, they might get too many ideas at the same time and they don't really stick around, you know, follow things through, and, you know, they are very excitable, very easily distracted. I think you can guess which side of the spectrum I'm on. But on the other hand, we have the Eeyores. And one of my favorite Eeyore lines is, "It's not much of a tail, but I'm sort of attached to it." You know, and there's a story behind it about Eeyore losing his tail, and they try to fit different tails, and then they end up finding his tail. It's a really nice story. So the Eeyores are a little bit more calculated. They're a little bit more consistent with how they perform tests. They have a slower pace, okay? And they think about a lot of different things before they implement things. But once they do, they kind of go with it. It's not, they keep a more consistent path. On the other hand, they could be quite anxious about changing their own natural pace with interruptions. They're overly critical sometimes about other people, about themselves, okay? I mean, if you read some of the stories, you'll see that Eeyore is just as critical, if not more, about themselves than Eeyore about other people. And they're likely to be more resistant to change, okay? So these are extreme examples, okay, of different archetypes. And they represent two ends of the same spectrum. Most of us fall somewhere in the middle. And sometimes we tend to kind of gravitate from one side to the other. It's not really a binary, you know, either or. So the most important thing to remember is to recognize where we are on this and remember that not everybody sees change in the same way that we do. And this applies not just if you're a Tigger like me and you're trying to, propose a new idea and you're surrounded by Eeyores and you're like, oh, come on. Like, why can't you see this? On the other hand, you can be approached by a Tigger who has had their nth idea of the week. So you want to put things in perspective as well. If you're trying to be influenced by a Tigger who's just not really, sticking around for a lot of different things. So if you take one thing from this talk today, I hope that you'll remember this slide and kind of have a little bit of a self-reflection with yourself and see where you are, because I believe, and I do this with myself all the time, I always check myself to see where I am and how I'm being hit with different things, and to make sure that I'm not like causing damage to myself or other people, and then I'm trying to be better, right? Because wherever you go, there you are. And I can be a more gentle and better version of a Tigger, but I'm not really, I don't think I can ever see myself being more on the Eeyore spectrum. So you can only be a better version of yourself. You can't really change to be someone else. Okay, so now I'm going to kind of take you through a series of a bit of life lessons, I guess, things that I've learned along the way from the different things that I've done. And if you see in the first slide, I do quite a bit of things, quite a lot of things. And so these are just key points that I picked up along the way during my years living and working in this modern world. And just remember, I can only speak from my own experience. I don't pretend to give you a magic solution. I did write this in the abstract. I cannot give you a magic solution. There's no one formula that fits everything, right? So what I'm hoping to do is to help you kind of expand maybe your way of thinking about how you handle change, how you embrace or manage it, and how to influence change in your group. So I'm just giving you my own perspective. And maybe it's the same as yours, and maybe it's different. But this is like I said, it's quite a subjective, it's a very personal way of doing things. But I hope that what I say will be useful to you. So the first life lesson is you want to start with why. Find the true motivation for the change and own it. Okay, so the phrase "start with why," I first heard it in a TED Talk by Simon Sinek, and I don't know how to pronounce his last name. And Simon packed up the sort of why, how, what model. Is you start with why you want to do anything, really. So he was talking about it in the context of your job or any kind of task. Is you want to start out with why you really want to do it. Find your passion, find your motivation. It's not just for stage actors. It's for everything in life. You always find your motivation. And then you figure out how you want to achieve your goal, and then you create certain tasks or figure out what it is exactly that you want to do. In this context, specifically of change, it's even more crucial because the first question when you propose a change to a group, or when you propose any kind of new idea to a group, is people are going to ask you, why? Like, why should I care? What's in it for me? Why are you proposing this? What is it that you're trying to achieve? Okay? So knowing and owning the answer to this question can help you diffuse some of the initial shock or some of the initial anxiety of being offered an alternative to what some people would consider the tried and tested way, right? So especially if you're proposing something that's a bit more extreme, this is a screenshot from Office Space, which is one of my favorite 90s movies, and they bring in some consultants where people have to interview for their own jobs, and this is their banner. Is this good for the company? And we kind of like to grumble about this, but what's in it for me? This is a very, is this good for the company, the project, the group? Is this good for you? If you can't answer the why question to yourself, then you won't be able to answer to anyone else, right? And I just have to say something about if your answer to why I want this change is because I like this new shiny thing, it's probably not an acceptable answer. I mean, we have new tools and new ways of doing things coming up every day, every week, every month. You hear about this, this new technology or a new language or a new cryptocurrency or and everything. We're surrounded all the time by new things. So just because something is new and cool, it doesn't necessarily mean it's good for what it's going to help you achieve your goal, right? So I'm going to talk about, but I like this. I'm going to talk about facts and feelings a little bit later. But do try to go in a little bit deeper. And if you find the real reasoning, okay? So because I like it, could be great because it helps you. We have to care, right? Flavio was talking about, you can't make an impact if you don't care. But just because you care about something, just because you like something, doesn't necessarily make it factually appropriate, okay? So, if you're not sure whether something you want to propose is in fact good for the company, try running it maybe in your trust circles first. If you want to propose, if you're working on a big open source project and you want to propose a big change and you're not quite sure, then, pick out a few people who you trust who can give you feedback with empathy, okay? Not just shoot you down blindly. People that that you can kind of bounce ideas off of, okay? And they can help you solidify your case before you present it, send it out to the wild, right? So here I want to segue into why not, to address the question of why not, because sometimes people will defend the status quo, okay? So if they're asking you why, and you say, well, because it's good for this, this, and that, and they will say, but the way we've done things up until now is tradition. Things have always been done this way. So that is a subtext sometimes. Sometimes you won't be hit with this, explicitly. But it's something that you need to consider when you answer the why question, okay? And you need to be empathetic in how you can communicate this. And I'll mention this a little bit more clearly later. So how can we make sure? What's the first thing we got to do to make sure that we're ready to answer the why question? It's do your homework, okay? And the reason for that is that you want to make the scary unknown less scary for other people, okay? So knowledge is power, and we know this theoretically, but we get blind spots sometimes. We make assumptions. I'll talk about this in a bit. And I don't know how many times, people just throw ideas, they don't think them through, and especially if you communicate this to a large group of people, you're not really going to get the best reaction. And if you don't want to get ripped to shreds on a mailing list, when you want to make a proposal for something, do your research, okay? Because when you propose a new concept to anybody, especially, a larger group of people, it shows respect if you do your research. It shows respect for the people's time who are going to take the time and read your proposal. It shows respect for the idea that you're proposing, okay? And people will appreciate you, and they'll take your proposal more seriously if they can see that you are prepared, okay? So if you want to change, for example, the methodology or the workflow of how you manage pull requests, right? Come up with an actual proposal, show the steps of what you want to do, and research cases of examples where it worked. Let's say if you want to implement a new build system, dig into whoever made the build system and dig into their code and see if it actually works, right? So, and then write down, make an official proposal if you want to do something like this, okay? And for those of you who might think to yourself, well, I want to be agile, I don't want to do planning, we want to be flexible, let's just try it and see what happens. I don't know how many times I hear this. And maybe if it was entirely up to you, and you had all the time in the world, you didn't have to worry about, making deadlines or paying your rent or whatever, then yeah, you can spend a lot of time on experimenting and just, failing fast, failing often. But it's kind of like, it's kind of a balance between being prepared and being agile, right? So there's no clear-cut answer. I mean, even when I used to be a Scrum Master, we used to work on this a lot. You have to prepare your user stories. You have to prepare your backlog. You have to maintain it. You have to groom it. You know, you have to do sprint planning meetings, and hopefully they won't take more than 2 hours. I've had them take 8 hours, and that was just not very agile. Anyway, who knows? I mean, maybe while you're doing your research, you'll discover that the way that you thought your idea could be implemented might need some changes. You know, you're going to be able to be more prepared to do whatever it is that you want to do. And it could be that you'll realize that your idea might not be so great. Because that happens too. I mean, you know, you come up with this concept and you're like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we do things in a different way? And then you research it and you're like, well, that's not exactly. Maybe not for this, but maybe for something else. So you're going to save yourself a lot of time and possible aggravation, you know, if you're really prepared. So part of this preparation could also be handled by the fact that some things are easier to show than to explain. And therefore, I kindly ask you to lead by example. Okay, so, you know, be the change that you wish to be in the world. This quote, by the way, some of the internet says that it's Mahatma Gandhi, but apparently it's kind of been debunked. I don't actually know who said this, but I like it. So, sometimes you gotta do the thing yourself. It's not enough to make a proposal, right? Sometimes you gotta make a proof of concept. Sometimes you have to run a pilot, okay? This is obviously relevant more for bigger changes. It's also relevant for, you know, human-based changes. You know, if you want to, let's say you want to propose a new content management system, install it locally, you know, publish some things, show people how it can work. If you want to increase diversity and you want to make your community more inclusive and less toxic, stop being toxic, you know. Point out when other people are being toxic. You know, you got to start with yourself. And I'm going to give you an example. I like this picture. It's so clear, I don't know, to me. And I hope it's clear to you. I can't make this assumption. So I'm going to give you a quick example. A few years ago, I was working on JBoss. Fuse documentation team, we were, most JBoss development is done tracked in Jira. And we were having some trouble integrating our doc team tracking into the general developer tracking. So I proposed that we set up our own Jira project. And I actually made a proof of concept of this, and we implemented it in the documentation team. And we had to do a lot of socializing on this change. So we had to show how different workflows are going to be integrated so we could link cards to the developer cards and then flag things and tag things, and it was really nice. I really liked that, the solution that we did. And so we implemented it in our team, and then other teams also saw what we did, and they started using our templates and our guides, right? So I mean, if you show people that you're walking the walk, okay, then it's going to help you get engagement so much better on certain things, right? I mean, some things are harder to implement as a proof of concept or as a pilot, but see how much you can do. Get some kind of minimum viable pilot going. And if you're thinking to yourself that I might be stating the obvious here, nothing is ever obvious, okay? Nothing, like ever. What might be immediately understood by you might need more explanation to others. And what seems like an obvious and expected behavior in a certain group might be exactly that thing that you're trying to change, okay? So you can never assume that people will see things in the same way that you do. I mean, you know, the joke that I made, the Winnie the Pooh references, like, I can assume that a lot of, you know, that everybody will know what I'm talking about, but I can't, you know, and it's much more inclusive and much more empathetic, you know, if I give this context, and so that the people who might not have necessarily grown up in a country where it was popular when they were kids, right? So Winnie the Pooh might not have been in their home country. So they don't know what I'm talking about. So I'm kind of giving a bit of context, right? So, and it's a little things that you can do to also help. So this is the messaging thing. So I would rather be Captain Obvious than General Assumption. And the pun was not originally intended, but I kept it anyway. So I'm going to give a little bit of a difficult example of how I see this. So alcohol as a conference catalyst is not something that I'm a fan of. And I organize conferences, and we usually downplay any kind of drinking aspect. And as someone who's been on many code of conduct committees, I've dealt with a lot of problems that have to do with alcohol. Anyway, I'm a little bit more sensitive to this than it might be a cultural thing, or I don't know what. So when I was so I actually had a different example for this, but something happened this week. I was looking for a ticket to the social event, and I saw that there was a bunch of events listed on the page for the conference, and like I think 3 out of 4, or like most of these had the word beer in the title. And I'm like, well, what if I don't drink? What if I can't drink? You know, what if I'm not supposed to drink? Like I couldn't and this stuff like, so, you know, we had the pie beer and this, that, and all these different things. And to me, it was obvious that there's a problem here, right? Because I see these, each one of these social events may have been okay on its own, but to see them all stacked up on a page like that, it kind of made me cringe. It kind of made me think, well, these events, if I don't drink, these events are not for me, okay? And I feel a little bit excluded. So I was talking to a friend on the org team, and, you know, they were a little surprised because to them it was obvious that a name like pie beer is tradition, right? And it's just the way that it's always been done, you know, and it wasn't like, I didn't get a bad reaction from them. It was just a bit like, oh, I mean, I didn't really think about it. And, you know, I mean, times are different now, and you know, if you want to make your events and your community more inclusive, you have to remember that you have more people, and just because it's always done this way doesn't mean that it's immune to any kind of change or evolution. So I'm trying to think of names for it next year, maybe Pie Social or Pie Night or something a little bit more neutral. But, you know, we'll see. So it's just something to think about, right? So the point is to be prepared that your idea or whatever it is you're proposing is going to be filtered through different personalities and different perspectives, backgrounds, traditions, you know, habits, good or bad. And I mean, this is true whether you're trying to refactor your testing framework or whether you're proposing to adopt a code of conduct to a community that never had one before. Which brings me to my next lesson, which is not just about you. And just because you can doesn't mean you should. This goes beyond proposing some changes to methodologies or processes. I mean, when we work on software, isn't every new feature that we're delivering basically a change, right? I mean, yeah, some features are enhancements. We try to maintain backwards compatibility, but, you know, we're looking at things in a user-focused way, so we need to ask ourselves that why question, right? So if we look at change like this, it's not just when we ask the why, or why should you care, but also when we figure out how to communicate this, okay? So empathy is something that it's a lifelong thing, right? I mean, we always try to consider other people. It's not just about you. Just because you like doing something doesn't mean, you know, that other people might like it. And, you know, remember how nothing is obvious? People consume information in different ways, and everyone's filters. Everybody filters incoming information through their own personality filters. I mean, if you can't communicate your idea in a way that's going to be understood by a broader perspective, then you're not going to get buy-in. People are not going to buy it. And so tread carefully. You know, demonstrate your knowledge. Be gentle in your communication. And if you're not sure, again, I will say ask. Consult with your peers. You know, bounce ideas off of your trust circles. Okay? And now I want to talk a little bit about discussions and how to open them first. One of the things I love about working in open source is that it's open. Sorry. Open communication, open discussion, you know, open early, open often, and fear not the open floodgates, because the floodgates are open, okay? And, you know, people will see what you're proposing. People will see what you're writing, and they will express their opinion, their very, very explicit opinion, whether you like it or not. I mean, this is open source development, right? I mean, we are surrounded by passionate people who really, really care, and they will have pretty opinionated personalities most of the time. And this is kind of the price we pay for having an open first approach. I mean, I'd still take it over a censored or top-down, you have no choice but to do this, you know, process, especially in the company where I work. And yeah, sometimes we get some backlash and we have to untangle facts from feelings. But the reward for maintaining an open first decision methodology means that when we do manage to influence, when we do convince people that what we want to do is good, then the engagement is more genuine, it lasts longer, and people are going to do a better job, okay? So Red Hat is an open organization, which means that we can talk about anything and everything. We have mailing lists company-wide. I usually mute them unless I need to check something because they're quite busy. But the point is that even though, I mean, we have like more than 10,000 people in the company, so some stuff we don't really have an influence over, like our email system and I don't know what. But things like the company brand, the mission statement, you know, a lot of different things that are company-wide, anybody can chip in, right? And this slide I've shamelessly stolen with permission because it's on GitHub and it's open source from my friend Rebecca Fernandez. They started an Open Decision Framework project. And this is kind of a template or they have a whole deck on GitHub. I'll post this in the links to my slides. And it's just kind of a way to construct any kind of decision that you want to make. And you want to make it transparent, inclusive, and customer-centric. Now, customer in this case is not necessarily the customers that are buying your product. It's you are the customers. If I'm proposing a change to you, you are my customers. I want to sell you my idea, right? So if you kind of make that mental shift, then you want to do something that's more customer-centric or user-centric. You want to show how it's good for your users. So when you engage your groups early, you can achieve a much more informed acceptance. People will feel like their opinion matters and that they have a safe space to voice concerns. If you invite feedback, okay, then people are more likely to give you better feedback. And there's one of my friends, Christy Lutz, has a whole talk about how to give good feedback. Then you might not think that it's needed for smaller projects, but look again at how open your decision-making really is. And some of us might not work for an open organization. So if you can be kind of a champion and lead by example and just try to start with yourself as well. You know, so if you start opening up your own decision process, maybe you can inspire other people to do the same. So discussions and open decisions. And this is a very important lesson. Feelings are not facts. Feelings are not facts. You got to follow your heart. But you got to take your brain with you, okay? This is especially true when you're doing things like online communication, mailing lists, Twitters, IRC chats, things like that. So working in open source, we are passionate people. We are given space to experiment. We're given space to innovate and create things that other industries are not privileged to do. It is a privilege to work in open source, and I'm quite grateful for it. But it can lead to some wires getting crossed because we really care about what we want to do, okay? And I made a thing, and it's my baby, and I want you to use it. But what do you mean you don't like it? I mean, that sort of thing, that sort of scenario is something, you know, that might be familiar to some of you. And if not, then I have a lot of respect for you, that you can separate your facts from your feelings like this, because I can't, you know? So I very recently had a small but painful Twitter storm around the Right to Docs conference in Prague. We made an announcement, somebody who's a good friend of mine responded, and I took it personally. I read feelings where there were not feelings. You know, we had a short, little altercation on the Twitters, and then we kind of talked about it, and he explained, and I took responsibility for my part, and I've learned a very important lesson. Again, and I'm learning this all the time. So if you're doing your homework, you're preparing the information, you're constructing your message in an empathetic way, you're increasing the chances of getting through this initial feeling that some people might have of like, what is this that they want me to disrupt? You know, like, can't you just let things be? Sometimes people have this anxiety. And yeah, sometimes we have to accept a change that we don't love. But if we can look past our own feelings and examine it more objectively, we might be able to see the big picture as well. I wanted to do this separately than facts versus feelings because this is a special lesson. Okay, do not feed the trolls. Do not. Put that email down and take a breath. Okay, we live mostly online. It is an excellent breeding ground for trolls, and trolls are people who will go to great lengths to poke holes in your theory, burst your bubbles, and generally sabotage any kind of healthy discussion around progress and optimization. So when you see something on a mailing list or the Twitters or whatever, just resist the temptation to respond immediately. Unless someone is clearly violating a code of conduct, a community code of conduct, if they're being extremely aggressive, threatening, harassing, there is no need to respond immediately, okay? Walk away from your laptop, have a coffee, take a walk, breathe, and only maybe somebody consult with someone from your trust circle. Should I be offended by this? Is this person really being a troll? Just kind of reality check yourself, and you'll thank yourself, your past self, for doing this, okay? Because sometimes the trolls are not actually trolls. What might look like a troll at first, could maybe be an Eeyore, because if you're proposing an idea that you're emotionally attached to, you might encounter some resistance. And just because someone presents an opposing view, it doesn't make them a troll. The question is, how are they presenting it? What kind of debate or discussion are they practicing, right? Are they just trying to provoke an argument, or are they actually, expressing a valid concern, right? And it might be that you're not dealing with a troll at all. It might be that you just need to communicate your message in a more Eeyore-friendly way. Okay, so think carefully before you engage in kind of arguments like this, because your energy is finite. I should print this out and put it on my laptop because I need to be reminded of this every day. Okay, being a Tigger means that I want to do all the things all the time, and I can't always do that. About 2 years ago, I had a burnout, and I had to take a break from life, and now I'm trying to balance myself. So some people might have, to come from the other extreme, but you can't always change everything at once because you're risking either burning yourself out, burning bridges with other people, or you could, if you want to change too many things, you might end up just not being able to do anything, So, for example, last year at Write the Docs, we had to refactor our website, our conference websites. We also wanted to reinvent or rebrand the conference, okay? So, and then so refactoring the whole website, doing a lot of back-end, front-end work, and then also doing a lot of graphic design and complete overhaul of our community conference brand was a lot of work. And if we wanted to, we had to look at all the things that we wanted to change, and we had to prioritize. If we wanted to get the conference websites out on time, if we wanted to, launch ticket sales and get people to save the dates, we couldn't do everything, okay? So we chose to leave the brand as it is and refactor the website, mainly back end. I mean, the front end was also tweaked. The conference websites look amazing. Thank you, Leo, who's also an organizer of Pi Caribbean, really great guy. But we used the existing brand for the web designer to use the website. And we're gonna rebrand next year because now we have a great back-end framework, everything that we can just switch up the brand on top of it. So incremental change can lead to a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts, and you're at a much, much lower risk of burning yourself out or the bridges that you want to connect. So the last thing I want to say is that stuff happens, okay? Sometimes despite your best intentions, your solid research, and your heightened empathy, the group might not accept your proposed change, okay? The road to success is always under construction. Things will happen. You might also try to preserve something, and you're going to be hit with a change that you are not really ready to accept, but you have to deal with it. So things like, I have to switch managers now at Red Hat. I didn't really want to. I love my manager. I'm not really that manageable anyway. But got to do it. Shuffling of teams, I have no way of doing it. Or, for example, I made this slide deck in 16 by 9, and then 2 days ago I found out I have to change it to 4 by 3. I don't really have a choice, I got to do it, and it's little things like that, that add up, or it could be big things like I found out, March and April for me was really, really busy. A lot of travels, conferencing, gigs. I'm also a singer and a dancer. And so, but then I found out I have to move, and I ended up, and I'm just, when am I going to fit all of this? And these are just examples from the last weeks and months, right? Even for a tigger like me, this can get quite exhausting. So you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst, right? And we have to make sacrifices and compromises, but we just want to be happy and do better. So, quick summary of all the life lessons that I just told you about. And if you want to screenshot this, Twitter, whatever. I will also post the slides. Yeah, and give people some time to. I should print this out and have it on my laptop as well. So this is just an arbitrary list of things I wanted to share with you. This has, my very unscientific opinion about things. It's just experience. I learned most of the things the hard way because I'm stubborn and I don't really listen to much of advice. So I'd rather do the thing. And I would like to end with quoting the Serenity Prayer, and this has nothing to do with religion. It was written by some American dude somewhere around the 1910s or 1920s. So, deity of choice, could be God, could be a group of drunks, doesn't matter. Grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So, can we make the light bulb want to change? Probably not. We can't force anybody to want anything. But we can propose, and we can discuss, we can influence as much as we can. So even if initially the light bulb was happy to just hang out and do whatever it is that light bulbs do, maybe it will accept that it will lead a much better life as, let's say, a cactus. I don't know. So, thank you. No questions. Come talk to me later.